All right, Doctor, we're back from a break. Did you have an
Do
opportunity?
you know how much longer you're going to be?
Oh, at least 2 more hours. Doctor, did you have an opportunity to speak to your counsel at the time of the break?
Yeah.
Did you, is there anything in your testimony given so far that you'd like to change?
I mean, just, yeah, I mean, like we were talking about before, I didn't document it that I did the suicide risk assessment, but I always do those. Like, it's just, you know,
Well,
what we do.
So, Doctor, are you telling me that you're changing your testimony from what you testified earlier? That's very simply my question.
No.
Is
no,
there
no,
anything
no.
changed in your testimony from the break that you would like to?
No,
go
you're
forward?
twisting my words. No.
No,
I'm not changing it. I'm just sort of explaining a
All
little
right,
bit more.
Doctor, I want you to listen to my question. My question is very simple.
Uh-huh.
Having had a break and spoken to your attorney, is there anything you would like to change about your testimony at this point in time?
I guess not.
Okay, so it's fair to say that everything you've testified to as of right before the break is true and accurate and is your sworn testimony. Is that fair to say?
Sure, I think so.
Doctor, I need a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Doctor, earlier today, this morning, I had you identify plaintiff's 1B, which is the subpoena and the first set of records that you sent to me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Doctor, you were aware when I requested the records, you knew that John had passed away from a gunshot. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, he had actually, because you had spoken to the ICU physician, you were aware, were you not, that he actually lived a couple days in the ICU before he passed away. Is that right?
Yes.
And Doctor, when you spoke to the ICU physician, you were aware that he was awake and conscious, correct?
Yes.
And that he may have been sedated at some point in time, but he was awake, conscious, and felt pain. You understand that?
I guess I didn't know all of that. No.
Well, is this the first time you're hearing about this?
Yeah, I mean, I knew he was in the ICU, and I knew that they had him on a bunch of medication, and
But you were aware that he was awake and conscious during this period of time. That's what the ICU physician told you. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, Doctor, would you be surprised to learn that I have taken the deposition of the ICU physician, and he informed me that that is specifically what he told you?
Okay.
Would that surprise you to learn that?
No.
Okay. And Doctor, now, when I sent you the subpoena, I didn't send a HIPAA compliant authorization with that from anybody that was appointed as a representative of John, did I?
No.
Well, it's not a no, Doctor. You received my subpoena, correct? This is the subpoena, right?
Yes.
And was there a HIPAA compliant authorization attached to this subpoena when it was provided to you?
I don't know.
Well, Doctor, feel free to look at it. Is there a HIPAA compliant authorization that was attached to that subpoena?
No.
All right. So you provided me records without a HIPAA compliant authorization, correct?
Well, I mean, his daughter called and wanted information, and so, I mean, he was always close with his daughter, and I mean, once he passed away, I thought it was okay to respond and send the records with the subpoena.
Well, Doctor, you mentioned you spoke to the daughter, Tracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? And
Yes.
Tracy's actually the plaintiff in this case, correct? You saw it from the caption,
Yes.
okay? And she's actually sued you on behalf of her father, John, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, she was next of kin, so I thought she got his records.
Right, and based on the testimony you provided, you actually spoke to Tracy on, you spoke to Tracy on June 22nd, 2020, correct? And that's in your notes.
Yes.
And in fact, you put in your notes that you were not allowed to talk to Tracy about John's PHI, correct?
Well, but it was an emergency situation, so
Well,
I,
doctor, how is it an emergency situation if the daughter is calling and you hadn't learned at that point in time when you're speaking to the doctor or Tracy that you were not that strike that was a horrible question. How is it a emergency situation when you first spoke to Tracy and you did not know that John had actually committed suicide until much later in that conversation?
well, if he's in the hospital, isn't that an emergency?
Well, you learned that later in the conversation, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, did you read Tracy's deposition? Her transcript of this when she testified under oath, just like you're doing today? You haven't read that?
No, I didn't know I could.
Would you be surprised to learn that Tracy actually testified that she did not speak to you or advise you that John had actually committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide until much later in the conversation with you? Would you be surprised to learn that?
No, I guess not.
So how is this an emergency situation, doctor?
Because he was in the hospital, in the ICU.
Well, okay. So you learn that he is in the ICU, and you still tell Tracy you cannot provide PHI to her, correct?
Right.
So you knew at that point in time that you could not turn over PHI.
Right.
And you understand that PHI includes not just verbal communication, correct?
Right.
And you also understand that includes also producing medical records. You cannot turn over PHI medical records without an authorization.
I guess I figured in an emergency situation I could.
Well, but you didn't turn over the records until after John was already dead, right?
Yeah.
So you violated, actually strike that. You understand that the standard of care requires you not to turn over records, even with an attorney subpoena, right? Without a HIPAA compliant authorization. You understand that, correct? Yes?
Yes.
And you understand that even the APA has standards, as we talked about earlier today, that require you not to turn over records without a HIPAA compliant authorization. You understand that?
Yes.
And you understand that you turned those records over to me without a HIPAA compliant authorization. That's what you testified to, correct?
Yes.
So you violated John's PHI.
Well, he was already dead, though.
But you understand that that's in the state of New York, where we currently sit today, that that survives, his privilege survives his death. You understand that, right?
Yes.
And that means you violated the standard of care, correct?
I was just trying to help her out, right? She wanted to know what happened in the therapy. She wanted to know why he was so depressed. She was trying to grieve and understand why her dad was gone. And I didn't tell her anything over the phone, but I thought when I got a subpoena from an attorney, I had to turn it over.
Okay. And you did, in fact, turn it over without a HIPAA compliant authorization, as you mentioned earlier. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because otherwise we'd have an authorization with the records that you provided to me the first time, right? Or the records your attorney provided me the second time. Correct? Yes?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this. At what point in time did you change the records from what you initially provided to me when I served a subpoena on you to when your attorney turned these records over to
Well,
me?
okay, that's not fair. I found an error in them, so I was just fixing the error.
Well, doctor, what do you consider to be an error?
See that note about his dad's history, that wasn't accurate, so I was just fixing it so that it was correct.
Well, you understand. Well, let me back up. Before I even go into the changes here, doctor, based on both records, let's see if I can find this here. You saw the patient on April 16th, 2020, based on either one of these records. Is that fair to say? And that was
Yeah.
a telepsychology session, right?
Yes.
You did not document this note that you're putting in there until April 18th. Is that right?
True. Yep.
And doctor, you understand how I found out about that, right?
No.
I asked counsel, and counsel provided me an audit log. Do you know what an audit log is?
No.
Well, an audit log is a stack, and I have the documentations over here. An audit log, what it does is tells me when you actually access the chart and when you changed or altered or put alternative information into the medical record. Do you understand that? Did you know that?
I didn't know you could track my movements. No.
Right. So I was able to track that you had logged it. You'd logged in on the 16th, but then you actually entered most of the note on the 18th. Did you know that?
No.
And it's the same thing with the appointment on. Let's see here.
But I still documented it. Isn't that what's important?
Doctor, you'd agree with me that when you document something, it should be at the time that you're rendering care or immediately after that you render care and treatment to the patient. You would agree with that, would you not?
I guess the
Yes
best.
yes
you
or
can.
no, then
It's
all
been
that.
COVID.
Doctor,
We've been so busy.
Doctor, yeah. Well,
I
are you?
didn't think 2 days later I could still remember what happened in the session. Isn't it?
Well, doctor, has your patient load increased during COVID?
Well, sure.
And
We're all
increased
busy.
because you were doing telemedicine, right?
Well, no, we're all busy. There's just a big need.
But
so-
don't you understand that it's important to document immediately after seeing a patient in case a situation like this arises and the patient ends up dying? Don't you think that's important?
Well, I mean, but it's hard to get everything done immediately. I mean, you have people back to back. I can't necessarily always do that.
Doctor, you would agree with me that you did not document certain notes at the time that you were immediately after seeing the patient.
But he was still alive there. Why does it matter?
Well, doctor, it matters because you didn't put all the diagnoses in the first set of medical records you provided to me, right?
Well,
If you
yeah,
look at
I
the
did.
if you look at the January 5th, 2021 records, there's three areas where there's no diagnoses. Do you see that?
No, where? Wait, where are you looking?
I'm looking at May 14th, April 16th, March 16th. You want me to keep going? You have no diagnoses in there. Do you see that, doctor? It's blank. You see
yeah,
that?
but it's because it's the same one from before.
Well, doctor, do you see the July 1st records? April 16th, March 16th, May 14th? You have diagnoses in this. Is that right?
Right.
So it's not in the first set of records, but it's in the second set of records, correct?
Yes.
And you provided me these records after I served you the subpoena, correct?
Yes.
And these records were after.
I was just trying to flush them out a little, that's all.
So doctor, which one's accurate?
The most recent one.
So you're saying the 7-1 after
Yeah.
you already were aware that a subpoena had come in and been served on you, and there was a high likelihood that you were going to be sued, that you're now suddenly providing me with a set of medical records. You understand that? And you're saying
well,
these are the most
we're just
accurate.
trying to tidy up the record.
So doctor, my last question to you is the January 5th, 2021 records, are these not accurate?
Well, I mean, they're pretty accurate.
Yes or no? Yes
they
or no,
just
doctor?
needed a little bit more.
Yes or no, doctor, that answer the question.
What do I say to that?
And you understand, doctor, the jury's going to hear this information. So yes or no, which one of these is accurate?
I mean, they're both accurate.
Doctor, yes or no, and then I'll let you explain which one of these two documents are actually accurate, these office records.
The most up-to-date one.
Thank you.